Hello everyone, and welcome to our Essential Facts About Raw Food webinar and open house series. This is our fourth webinar in the series, The Importance of Raw Foods for Microbiome Health. We're super excited to share with you today some little known yet important information about probiotics, prebiotics, and the human microbiome. There's an awful lot of talk about this subject these days, and unfortunately, just as much confusion. A diet that includes an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables is so beneficial for so many reasons, and when implemented properly for each individual, can transcend the need for so many of the pills, potions, and powders that we all get bombarded with as allegedly essential for our health. A solid understanding of the relationship between fruits and vegetables and the human microbiome is a perfect example of this. For those of you who don't know us yet, I'm Dr. Rick Dina, and you'll be hearing from Dr. Karen Dina in a few minutes. We're both chiropractic physicians with a strong interest in plant-based and raw food nutrition, and we've been learning as much as we can about this topic for the last 30 years each, not only in our personal lives, but in clinical practice and in our research and nutrition curriculum development. We're board certified and licensed in the state of California. We're also the developers of the Science of Raw Food Nutrition series of classes that we taught for 10 years in person. We are the co-developers and instructors of the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition online and interactive course, which we'll share more about later on in this webinar. Now, from this and from speaking at many conferences and events over the years, we have become known for our thoroughness and scientific accuracy, our ability to make complex, confusing subjects easy to understand, and our encouraging approach that takes unnecessary hurdles out of people's way. You'll get just a little bit of a taste of each of those in today's webinar. We're also the hosts of the Raw for Life Summit 2016, the International Raw Food Summit 2017, and the Raw Food Mastery Summit 2018, as well as the authors of the Raw Food Nutrition Handbook. Before we go on, let me make sure that I say that the information and opinions expressed by us in this webinar are not intended to be used as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose or treat any medical condition or as a substitute for individual health care. This webinar is presented with the understanding that we are not liable for misconception, misuse, or adverse effects resulting from its use. Any type of dietary change, nutritional therapy, or fasting should always be undertaken with the supervision of a qualified healthcare practitioner. We may be those practitioners for you, but you won't obtain that just by watching this webinar. So moving on, in the webinar today, we will break through some misunderstandings about where important nutrients come from on a plant-based and raw food diet that can get in the way of people being successful in their quest for better health. Now, when Dr. Karen and I got started with raw food over 28 and 31 years ago, respectively, there were far fewer resources available than there are today. However, much of the information that we got back there was given from doctors and people who were very well educated about nutrition and had clinical experience and saw results, and they shared that information. Now, today, as we know, there's a lot more information than ever available before, but the thing is, anyone with a camera and an agenda sometimes can put information out there. And as a result of that, there is a lot of inaccurate information, misinformation, and conflicting information out there also. And that makes it so difficult for those of you seeking health to try to figure out how to best go about it. Collectively, I call this phenomenon the information age paradox, which once again means there's lots of information available, but compared to when we got started, a much smaller percentage of that information is now accurate. and it's going to get worse over time as the internet continues to expand. But when you have solid, reliable, accurate information, that cuts through all of the confusion out there, and you have a solid foundation in knowing how to implement the best in nutrition for your optimal health. We are committed to helping as many of you take the healthiest, most effective approach possible, supporting your pursuit of optimal health. I'll leave you with a quote from a former student of ours who took our Science of Raw Food Nutrition curriculum, which is the precursor to our expanded and updated Mastering Raw Food Nutrition online and interactive curriculum. Denise from Canada says there isn't a better course available designed to arm anyone desiring to improve the health of themselves and others, allowing them to weed through news reports, marketing, and research. Add on top of that a balanced, open approach presented in an inspiring yet modest manner. So feel free to let us know if you agree with this statement by the end of the webinar. Once again, we want to give you accurate information that you can truly use to make a difference in your life. We'd now like to share a little bit with you about what inspired us to start on this path in the first place. First, you'll hear from Dr. Karen, and then from myself.
I found raw food at a time when I was experiencing notable fatigue, for which there was apparently no answer. I was in college at the time and was sleeping 10, 12, and sometimes even more hours per night, and still waking up non-refreshed. I saw 3 medical professionals, and after multiple lab tests and evaluations, I had a diagnosis: fatigue of unknown origin. They had a whole list of everything I didn't have, but could not pinpoint the source of my fatigue. I asked every single one of them if my fatigue had anything to do with my college diet and lifestyle. They all emphatically said no. Things started to change, however, when a friend gave me a copy of a book that discussed vegan diets and the connection between diet and health. I also learned about the connections between diet and the environment and the way animals are treated. With all of these compelling arguments, I was open to giving this approach a try, and I became vegan. In addition to feeling good about eating compassionately and leaving a lighter footprint on the earth, I was so excited to find that my fatigue actually started to improve, despite what the so-called experts, in this case the medical professionals, said would happen. This personal experience opened the door to my thinking that diet really could make a difference in health and left me open to exploring other opportunities. Then when I learned about and implemented a raw food diet, my energy soared far beyond the impressive improvements I experienced by eating vegan. Now, in our 3-part video series, I shared the story of my introduction to raw food. Long story short, my fatigue vanished, along with a variety of other symptoms I'd had for years. And I had more energy than I knew what to do with. I could not remember a time when I felt better. I started to look healthier, I slept better, I enjoyed exercising, and my digestion improved. I was so inspired by the health results I was experiencing that I felt compelled to learn more about the inner workings of the human body, nutrition, and the diet-health connection. I really wanted to immerse myself in learning as much as I could, so I earned a second undergraduate degree in biology and received doctorate-level education in naturopathic medicine and chiropractic, which helped me to put everything I observed into perspective and on a much deeper level. Over the years, I've refined and revised my approach to raw food and tailored it to my individual needs, and we can show you how to do this too.
Now that you've heard from Dr. Karen, I'd like to share a little bit of my story with you. So here I was in 1986, not feeling my best. I was having a lot of allergy trouble in those days, which actually was a major part of most of my childhood. I have it in a way to thank because I felt so lousy, I was motivated to try to learn about some things to help be healthier. A few months after this, I started making major changes in my diet. And then fast forwarding to the spring of 1987, I went totally vegan with lots of raw foods included. So here I was in the summer of 1987. I'm the guy on the right here, and my brother was on the left, and you can tell his muscles are a bit more defined than mine. He had been at it for longer, but I was really starting to feel good. And I had been reading at the time that some people were saying, well, if you want to build muscle, you have to eat muscle. And if you only eat plant foods, you're going to wither away. Yet I was going to the gym regularly. My brother and I were about to go off on our landscaping job. That's why we were dressed that way. We had shirts on before the picture, though. And I was building muscle. My muscles were getting bigger. I was adding more weights to the machines, and it seemed to be working. So a few months into veganism at that point, and just a couple of months into working out pretty seriously. So moving forward to Thanksgiving of 1987, I ran in a 5-mile race in my town, well-known race, and I was giving it all I've got there, as the caption says. My mom just happened to get a picture of me near the finish line, really going for it. So that was a great race. I'll never forget. There I am with my brother at the end of the race, the muscular guy you saw next to me a few slides ago. And he was really into running also. And normally he would have been running in that race as well, except he had just finished a 7-day fast. And it wasn't appropriate for him to run yet. And so for us at the time, fasting was like the new frontier. You know, we started out with eating less fat and more fiber, and then moving to vegan and then raw. And then now we were all excited about fasting. And in fact, a few months after this photo was taken, I fasted on water only for 14 days, which among other benefits made a night and day improvement in my allergy issues. And I was absolutely delighted about that. So how did I do in the race? Well, let's take a look here. If you take a look at the bottom left, that might be a little bit hard to see. So let's bring a close up here. I ran this 5-mile race in 29 minutes and 7 seconds. So some of you who are runners might know out there, if you know, 8-minute mile pace for a 5-minute mile is number 600, you could probably guess better than I could how many people were in the race. But I'm going to guess 1,200 at least, maybe 1,500 or so people in the race. And I came in 37th. And I ran track in high school, but I wasn't especially good. But it seemed like all of a sudden I was, really up there with athletic performance. And looking back, I had been a vegan, mostly raw, for 6 months at that point. And I'm going to say that that was likely a major contributing factor. So here are the results of that race, which I mentioned. A couple other races that I'm proud of. In 1993, it was early in chiropractic school for me. I ran the Atlanta Half Marathon in a little under 1 hour and 27 minutes. So that's a 6 minutes and 38-second pace on average for 13 miles. In 1994, I ran my second 5K race. I had run one earlier where I did pretty well, but then I wanted to do better the next time. So I did some track workouts, and I ran that race in just over 17 minutes, which is a 5.5 minute mile pace for just over 3 miles. And I remember in that race, I came in 5th place, and there were like 600 or 800 runners in that race. So thinking back to the people who were telling me that I wasn't going to get enough protein on this type of diet, it started to seem really silly by that point. So fast forwarding to 1999, my girlfriend at the time went to an amusement park, and this was some big giant pterodactyl on top of this truck at the top. And you can see there that I've got some pretty good muscle development. I was mostly running at the time, but I was going to the gym a couple of times a week, and I had been doing so for a year or so at that point, and was building muscle as a result. And then a few months later, I believe this was the summer of 1999, so 12 years into being a raw vegan. And unfortunately, I was sedentary more of that time than I was active, but every time I started to get active, give it a few months, and I seem to be doing really well. So once again, people had been telling me for 12 or so years now that I wasn't going to be getting enough protein. And it seemed really silly, not just from my own experiences, but from meeting other people as well, and also studying the science behind it. So even though I was extremely convinced, and I'm just using protein as an example here, that I was getting enough of that, I knew that so much of the information people were spreading out there was inaccurate. And this is the type of thing, for example, that can keep people from going on a plant-based diet because they're concerned they're not getting enough protein, and then they go down a different path that may not serve them as well. And I know people who've actually had heart attacks and other things because of that particular misunderstanding. Now, unfortunately, there are lots of other misconceptions that have persisted over time. People get very concerned, not only about protein, but about where do you get your all sorts of other nutrients, vitamin B12 and D and K2, calcium, iron, selenium, zinc, omega-3s, and the list goes on. Adding to that list is confusion over the human microbiome. So next, Dr. Karen is going to speak to you about probiotics, prebiotics, and the human microbiome, and we'll see how all of this relates to the consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and other whole natural plant foods.
And now we're going to talk about the importance of raw plant foods for microbiome health. We all know that there's been a lot of conversation about the importance of probiotics for some time now. Probiotics are microorganisms that live in our digestive tract, and there are a wide variety of species that live there. All of those probiotics taken together collectively are known as our microbiome. Another way of stating that is that the microbiome is composed of the community of bacteria living in our digestive tract. So what exactly are probiotics? As we said earlier, essentially they are microorganisms with studied health benefits that live in our digestive tract, also known as our GI or gastrointestinal tract, and they compose our microbiome. The most well-known include Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidobacterium bifidum. There are many more too that have become popular recently. Probiotics start to populate our digestive tract upon birth and establish a mutually beneficial relationship with us. In other words, they get something out of the relationship, and so do we. It's important to understand the health benefits of probiotics, but there's one piece of the microbiome puzzle that is often omitted from these health conversations. And that has to do with how to keep these important organisms alive in our GI tract. How do these probiotics stay alive? That's the big question. And here is an important consideration that's part of that. Food. But what type of food is consumed by probiotics? This type of food? Actually, not really. How about this question? Do probiotics prefer the same types of foods that humans do? The answer to this question is partially yes, because the preferred food of probiotics is certain types of fiber, which we don't digest or use as a food source. But many types of plant foods that we consume contain these certain types of fiber that are preferred by probiotics. Fiber that can provide food for probiotics is referred to as prebiotic. As I mentioned, probiotics prefer certain types of fiber, but not all types. The most plentiful type of fiber that we find in whole plant food is called cellulose. And cellulose is composed of glucose. The glucose in this type of fiber is not usable by us because it's bound in the fiber complex. So it passes through our digestive tract undigested. And here's a picture of what cellulose looks like. As you can see, it's composed of a series of glucose molecules that are hooked together by bonds that are not digestible to us or by us as humans. By contrast, the fiber preferred by probiotic bacteria is composed of fructose instead of glucose. Now, we can't digest this type of fiber either, but probiotic bacteria can digest it, and it's actually their preferred food. And here's an example of a fructose-based fiber. Instead of glucose hooked together by bonds, what we see here is a series of fructose molecules hooked together by bonds. This type of fructose-based fiber would include both fructooligosaccharides and inulin. Maybe you've heard of these before. There are others too, but these are two of the main types that are found in plant foods. Now, what exactly are fructooligosaccharides and inulin? They are each composed of fructose molecules. The difference between them is in the number of fructose molecules they each contain. Fructooligosaccharides are composed of 2 to 10 fructose molecules hooked together by bonds. Some sources say 2 to 9. Now, if we look at the term fructooligosaccharidase, we see fructo, which means fructose, oligo, which means few, and saccharide, which means sugar. So essentially, fructooligosaccharides are a type of undigestible sugar or fiber composed of few fructose molecules hooked together by bonds. By contrast, inulin is composed of over 9 to 10 fructose molecules hooked together by bonds. Probiotics break down fructooligosaccharides and inulin into fructose and free fatty acids. So probiotics, right here, break down prebiotics into free fructose and free fatty acids. The probiotics then use the fructose as a food source. Because these prebiotics are probiotics' favorite food, this creates a microbiome profile in favor of the probiotics. Additionally, the abundance of probiotics helps to keep the less desirable organisms in check. A good example of such an organism would be Candida. Concerning the free fatty acids that the probiotics produce, they form into short-chain fatty acids. There are 3 short-chain fatty acids, each with beneficial properties. And here they are right here. We have butyrate, which is used by the cells of our large intestine, also known as colon cells. Propionate is used by the cells of our liver, and then acetate goes to fuel peripheral tissues such as our muscles. So the probiotics don't actually use the short-chain fatty acids themselves, but we do, or should I say our body does. Now that we've laid the foundation, here's the big question. Where do we get prebiotics? The good news is that fructooligosaccharides and inulin are found in more than 36,000 plant species. Here are some examples of rich sources of fructooligosaccharides and inulin. We have on this list here artichoke, leek, yacon, shallot, jicama, asparagus, dandelion greens, bananas, Jerusalem artichokes, and many more, including popularly consumed raw plant foods, such as those on this slide, such as lettuce, carrots, berries, oranges, and watermelon, and lots of other ones as well. Now, what amount of prebiotics do we need? Because this is such a newly emerging field of study, there's currently no set RDA for prebiotics, but researchers in several studies that I've read have observed health benefits in the realm of somewhere between 4 and 8 grams of prebiotics per day. How can one achieve this? The good news is that if you're eating a raw plant-based diet or a whole food plant-based diet, you are likely achieving these numbers without even realizing it. People on standard Western diets that are low in fruits and vegetables are likely not. Now, people on ketogenic and other types of low carbohydrate diets, which usually end up being low fiber diets, are likely not consuming this level of prebiotics either. Now, if you want to give yourself a little prebiotic boost, here are some foods that are especially rich in prebiotics. Up here on the table, we have bananas, dandelion greens, and Jerusalem artichokes, also known as sunchokes. Here's a table that shows the fructooligosaccharides content of certain foods. There are a number of foods that have been measured for prebiotic content, but many more that have yet to be measured, so hopefully we'll learn more in years to come. A couple things I'd like to point out here would be, first of all, if you look at the foods towards the top of the chart, those are the richer sources of the fructooligosaccharides. And then getting down towards the bottom, we see some of the more popularly consumed raw foods. And as you can see, they contain some fructooligosaccharides as well. And sort of the bottom line with this is that if you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, you're getting fructooligosaccharides and inulin, and it all adds up, as we'll see in just a moment. Now, it's really interesting to see the fructooligosaccharides and inulin content of individual foods. But what does the prebiotic content look like on a raw or plant-based meal plan? Now, here's an example of what I ate on one particular day a couple of summers ago. On this particular day, I went for a long run, so that's why I had a large fruit smoothie. I'd also like to point out that on many days, my salad can be even larger than this. I like to point this out also because depending on the type of diet that you're eating, you may be having different types of foods in different amounts on different days, so your prebiotic content may vary per day depending on what you're eating. The prebiotic content of these foods is at least 4.6 grams. Now, the reason why I say this is because many of the foods on the previous list have yet to be measured for prebiotic content. So, given what has been measured, we can expect to find at least 4.6 grams of fructooligosaccharides and inulin in these foods, and most likely more. However, I did not include the 2 cups of dandelion greens and 2 bananas in the calculation of the 4.6 grams. So when I actually add the 2 bananas and the 2 cups of dandelion greens into the calculation of the 4.6 grams, then what we actually see is at least 21.1 grams of fructooligosaccharides and inulin. That's amazing. Now, this shows us that plant foods can provide a good amount of prebiotics, and that certain plant foods like dandelion greens and bananas are extra rich sources of prebiotics. As we can see, whole natural plant foods provide these and other beneficial types of fiber, which is just one of the many health benefits derived from eating whole natural plant foods. Now, what about total fiber? Let's take a look at this slide here for some added perspective. The recommended dietary allowance for total fiber is 25 grams for women. Over the age of 50, that becomes 21 grams. 38 grams for men, and over the age of 50, that becomes 30 grams. By contrast, most Americans on a standard Western type of diet get around 15 grams of fiber per day. That's quite a bit of a difference there. So, how much fiber do we have in the list of foods that we just mentioned? Just to reiterate here, we're showing the different types of foods on that plan. And we just mentioned that these foods contain 21.1 grams of inulin and fructooligosaccharides, which are just 2 types of fiber. But what about the total fiber content of these foods? The total fiber content is 61.1 grams from these foods alone. And usually I eat more than this, which would mean that I would be getting more fiber. And the information in this presentation is just the tip of the iceberg on probiotics, prebiotics, and raw food and plant-based nutrition. And if this type of information is exciting or interesting to you, Next, Dr. Rick will share with you how you can learn more.
So if knowing information like this to help you succeed with raw food and plant-based diets, to experience a higher level of health is important to you, then we have a solution. If raw food science explained to you in easy to understand terms in a fun format with plenty of time to sink in, a manageable time commitment, and plenty of opportunity to ask questions and get clarification directly from us is important to you, then we invite you to join us for our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition and Educator course. It's a 12-month class that begins on August 29th of 2018 coming up. The time commitment is about 2 to 3 hours per week. And what that 2 to 3 hours a week consists of is, number one, professional quality videos similar to what you saw here in this webinar. And number one, you can watch these videos whenever you want. They're available 24/7 in our membership site. We also break the 2 hours into generally 20 to 30 minute video segments. So you don't have to watch 2 hours all at once. You can watch 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, whatever the case may be. We've designed it to be as convenient as possible to work into people's modern lives. Now, another thing to consider is that 2 hours of these videos is often hundreds of hours worth of investigating and reading and learning and checking things out and figuring out what's most important out there and what's not so important. And then we hone that down into 2 hours to deliver it to you in a way that makes sense and that you can understand. I know sometimes people get confused when they say, oh, well, this course is 500 or 800 hours and yours is only 100. Well, the thing is, you can go read this stuff. That's what they tell you to do. Here, go read this stuff. I'm like, wow, that would be easy if we were administering a course like that. You know, go read this stuff and then take a test. Well, the thing is, we've done that reading for you. We've done that research. We've done that investigation. And there are certain things like our clinical experience that you can't read anywhere else, because how many raw food clinicians are there out there sharing their actual real life clinical experience in a way that makes sense to people? So it's 2 hours worth of a lot of information really honed down so you can get so much out of just a very reasonable time commitment. So before we offered this course, the precursor to this course was our Science of Raw Food Nutrition classes that we taught in person for 10 years. When we did that, we had a 12-hour 2-day course that started out the curriculum. And here's a couple of quotes from some students who took that 12-hour 2-day course. One of them said, I've gotten more from these 2 days than I got in a year at the, and they didn't say the name, but the well-known nutrition program. I'm looking forward to the next segment. Another student said the sheer quantity and quality of information packed into 2 days by extremely knowledgeable and professional presenters was outstanding. So in our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition online course, we have a couple of quotes here. Anne-Marie from Paris said, I love my weekly videos, and you can see some of the video thumbnails popping up here of the different topics that we cover, just a little sampling of them. And Cynthia from Southern California said, the course content is awesome. And as you'll see later, Cynthia had an extensive background in raw food nutrition before taking this course, and actually Anne-Marie had a pretty solid background as well. So in addition to these finely honed, very informative videos, we also have notebooks that go along with the videos designed to complement them. We actually send you 4 notebooks over the course of the year, and it's over 900 pages worth of notes. And also included in there are the thousands of scientific references that we utilized to put our curriculum together. So if there's anything you want to go look up directly for yourself, you've got the information in order to do that. So the reason I say that these notebooks are designed to complement the videos is because In a lot of courses that we've seen before, online courses, what they do is they take sort of the easy way out for notes, and they just get some software that listens to the video and then makes a transcript of things in paragraph form. Now, if we did that, that sure would have been a lot easier for us. But what we did instead is we really thought things through. And we thought, okay, how would we want it to be in the notebook here if we had the notebook open when we were following along with the videos? And how would we want it if we just opened it up and wanted to look at things? So we've got bullet points, we've got the charts and graphs that you see up on the videos in the notebooks. And that way, when you're watching the videos, you don't have to go crazy trying to write down everything we said, because the majority of that is in your notebooks. That allows you to pay attention to what you're seeing on the screen and be able to watch everything and be able to listen to everything, knowing that it's in the notebooks also, and it really allows it to sink in. So they are a great complement to the learning process. Now, some students still like to, take extra notes and fill things in, and that's fine. And because this is a video that you're watching, you can hit pause, you can go back, you can listen again. So it's very, very thorough. And another nice part of these notebooks is that they are lifetime reference material. So at any time in the future, you've got your notebooks there to go quickly take a look at to refresh your memory about something that you are interested in. And our students just absolutely love the notebooks. That's what they've told us directly, as well as when we have sent out surveys. So in addition to that, 6 to 8 times per month, we have conference calls. So those are on Tuesdays, and there's 2 different times to accommodate different schedules as well as different time zones, because we have students from all over the world. So they allow you to ask us questions and interact with us directly. So one of the ways you can do that is you can either call in on the phone, as it shows here, or access it through your computer. And you can either raise your hand and ask us questions directly, and we're in real time there. Or another option is that every Monday before we have the Tuesday calls, we send all of our students out an email. And that email has the call-in information as well as the URL computer links to access the calls. If you click on those links prior to the call, you can type in your questions in advance. Then we will see those questions when we're on the call, answer them to the best of our ability, and then we save and record all of the calls. So if you're able to not make a call, maybe occasionally, or maybe even one call doesn't fit into your schedule at all, you can still get direct interaction with us as part of the course by submitting your questions in advance and then listening to the calls afterwards. Instead of just giving you some reading material and telling you to take the test, or maybe just showing up once a month or something like that, we are there many times per month, almost weekly. We take the last Tuesday of each month off, but other than that, we're there every Tuesday to make sure that you can interact with us and get any clarification and make sure that this all really makes sense to you. And we love answering questions. It's just, we look forward to Tuesdays now very much to interact with our students. In addition to that, we have a Facebook group for our students, and it's optional. Not all of our students do it, but most of them take advantage of that. So first of all, it's a great way for our students to get to know each other. They're also very helpful to support the conference calls. So oftentimes a student will ask a really good question during the conference call, and we'll share some information, again, answer things to the best of our ability. And then oftentimes we'll think, what, we've got a chart or an article or something else, either that we've got on our computer or that we've seen online, and we don't have the time to submit that right then because we're on the call. But once the call is over, we'll oftentimes add some extra things into the Facebook group that you can go look and we'll tag your name on there. So it's very helpful in support of the calls, as well as just to have a general sense of community. So a few other things to mention about the structuring of the class. So exposure versus cohesion. On the one hand, there are two of us. And Dr. Karen and I, for roughly the first 15 years on our raw food and plant-based paths, that was largely independent of each other. And for the last roughly 15 years or so, that has been together. And so on the one hand, we have a broad perspective. There's two of us, and we look at things a little bit differently. But on the other hand, we are a married couple and we love this stuff. This is what we talk about when we go out on walks and when we're driving and those types of things. And we are able to use both of us to integrate everything together so it all falls into place and it all makes a lot of sense. The previous incarnation of Mastering Raw Food Nutrition was known as the Science of Raw Food Nutrition that we taught in person for 10 years. Piles and piles of rave reviews from that, and oftentimes there was not enough time to answer questions and to have discussion. The way we've got it set up now online is for every 2 hours or so worth of content, there's an hour typically, and sometimes those calls go quite a bit longer. We just stay till we answer all the questions. There's roughly an hour worth of time in small groups for students to ask us questions. So there's more than enough time and a lot more than we had to interact with us directly. May sound ironic, but much more time to interact with us directly than our students got when we taught this class in person. The other thing we've noticed is that the questions that our online students ask us are a lot more in depth, and they show that our students understand the material much better than our in-person students did. And again, that's because you're not bombarded with 7 hours a day worth of information day after day after day after day. You get 2 hours a week, you watch it again, you get to think about it, you get to talk to us about it, and everything sinks in at a much deeper level. So we've been actually absolutely delighted about how things have been going. And we're a little over halfway. We're getting near the last quarter of our second year of having this class online. And of course, going into our third year, starting late August. And it's basically been working out really, really well. We're very happy with it from an educator's perspective. Now, speaking of education, many of our students go on to incorporate the information learned in our course into their raw food coaching practice, into their other types of educational endeavors. Some people decide to take that up once they've learned all the good information from our class, but many of our students just want the information for themselves to help lead the healthiest lives possible. And even when that's the case, oftentimes, whether you want to be or not, you become an educator. Because people see how you eat once you start eating differently, and they start asking you, oh my God, can you get enough protein? And what about calcium and iron and B12 and essential fatty acids? And doesn't fructose all turn into fat? And, on and on and on. And so we teach you in the course, especially once we get near the end of the course, we teach you how to integrate all the information together and to share that with other people in a way that creates rapport instead of conflict. Because when you're confident in what you're doing that's different than everybody else, you're much less likely to be stressed about it. And that, of course, is a really important part of health. The other benefit is that you'll be so much less likely to be led off track. No one will be able to knock you down with misinformation. You guys know, Dr. Karen and I, we know the science and we know our own personal data, and we know the data from many, many people that we've worked with. So in fact, not only would I not be deterred if I were in the mood to, depending on the situation, put on my diplomacy hat, I could very much turn that around to a learning experience for that person and a confidence builder for me. In fact, we had a We got an email a little over a year ago from one of our first year Mastering Raw Food Nutrition students. Just out of the blue, this email shows up and the subject line was sharing a great experience. And here's what she said. She said, "Doctors Rick and Karen, I had the most amazing experience yesterday evening and today. I'm in Monaco on business and I had meetings with 4 business people. It started out yesterday evening as I started my diatribe about nutrition. I started in reaction to a comment over dinner from one woman who referred to the fact that her husband ate lots of eggs and meat because he is a bodybuilder. A couple irrelevant things in there. And then she said, then I went on about how the body only needs the daily requirement of protein and the balance will be converted to energy via glucose or stored as fat, and how the fat is also used for energy. Then I turned to the balance between omega-3s and 6s and the inflammatory effects of omega-6s. Then I moved on to cholesterol and why we do not need it and how our liver produces it in the production of bile, being clear on how it is needed to emulsify fat, even the fats we get from eating vegetables, with a special comment about the omega-3s in leafy greens. The next morning at another meeting, they wanted more. And after explaining in some detail how the wrong mix of fat makes the structure of cells stiff and rigid, resulting in resistance for hormones, insulin, and serotonin, and the further consequences of each of those, and how too many omega-6s cause inflammation in our bodies, resulting in various disease processes. She says, I went on to calorie optimization overall and why overeating is bad, having too many free radicals and not enough antioxidants is bad, and why a meat and egg diet is deficient in vitamins, phytonutrients, and fiber. We talked about satiety and I shared how excess weight can cause dysfunctions in the hormones controlling satiety. I was on a roll and everyone in the meeting listened with pure fascination. I must admit I was also listening to myself with pure fascination. They were all just like I was before I started the course. They didn't know even the fundamentals of nutrition. How is it possible that so many well-educated people know so little about nutrition? Knowledge is power, and I felt totally empowered today. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have never been as interested in any learning experience in my entire life, and I am simply bursting with enthusiasm and passion. You have changed my life forever. So there's one example where a student realized how much she had learned from the course in a real-life experience, and instead of being the weirdo eating her salad off to the side, she took a leadership role in that interaction and had a good influence on other people also. So those are the types of things that can come about when you are really well educated about any subject, in this case about nutrition. We mentioned Anne-Marie from Paris before, who said she loved her weekly videos. Her official testimonial for the class says, I find it very helpful to have the point of view of doctors who are really impartial in their opinions and who explain things with scientific studies and fact, not philosophic thoughts, and who do not sell anything. I feel very lucky to be able to ask any questions each week and always receive a good response. I've learned a lot. I understand much more now, even though I studied biology and have read a lot of books about raw food nutrition. She said since then, but the real translation was prior to the class starting. She says, I hope there will be a second year for us to enter even deeper into the science of raw food. Thanks to you, Karen and Rick Dina. So when we hear that an enthusiastic student wants even more of what we have to offer, that makes us feel good that we're on the right track. Cynthia, who you heard from earlier from Southern California, said, I've been practicing a raw food lifestyle since 1998 when I did an internship at the Tree of Life with Dr. Gabriel Cousens. I really appreciate Dr. Rick and Karen's scientific approach to the subject of raw food nutrition and have appreciated learning the scientific basis of why this way of living is so beneficial. And one of the reasons that science is so important to Cynthia is because she is a real world scientist. She's a wildlife biologist that goes out in the field, and for weeks and sometimes months at a time, she camps in a tent and makes scientific observations. And so she knows the value of that, and she really appreciated that from our course. Now, if you don't have a background in biology and science like Anne-Marie and Cynthia, don't worry, we make it understandable for you. Here are a couple quotes from our previous Science of Raw Food Nutrition students. One said, "Thank you for your extreme efforts to reach the non-nerds. You were very organized, and I never worried that I would not have my questions answered. This was very professional and respectful of all levels of previous knowledge." Another student said the real strength of this course is the willingness of both presenters to engage students and respond to questions. Keep it up. And like I said, we love our Tuesdays where we get to interact and engage with our students and talk about raw food nutrition, our favorite topic. A couple of other quotes from our actual Mastering Raw Food Nutrition online students. So Monica from Southern California said, "I have taken many classes," and she means in plant-based and raw food nutrition. She said, "This was the most responsibly taught with high quality current content. It is one of the best classes I have ever taken." And Natalia in the beautiful Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico said, "This course gives you the knowledge and tools to be educated about plant-based and raw food nutrition. It's based on scientific researchers, awesome teachers. Thanks, Dr. Karen and Rick, for this exceptional course. It is so worth it." And this is just a small sampling of the testimonials we've received over the years from our curriculum. So in other words, there's lots and lots more where those came from, but we're going to keep things moving here in order to wrap up. So bottom line here to summarize is that you get 2 hours of professionally made videos per week. You get 900 pages and 4 notebooks thoughtfully designed to complement the videos and be lifetime reference material so information can sink in more easily. We have those 6 to 8 times per month conference calls where you can interact with us either directly or with a little bit of time delay, but it's still direct one-on-one interaction with us. If you ask a question, we answer it, then you'll listen to the call afterwards. We also have a Facebook group added as extra support. All of this is designed to give you the experience where you can learn the information and get the inspiration and the confidence to follow through on it for a lifetime of supercharged health.
Remember earlier when I told you my story about my decision to try raw food when I was in an energy pit of fatigue? Well, now it's time for you to make a decision. You're watching this webinar because you're interested in plant-based and raw food nutrition and in taking your knowledge to the next level so you can supercharge your health and maintain it for a lifetime. At this point, you already know if you want to learn more from us. This class will only be offered once this year, and once it fills, it won't be offered again until summer of 2019 and likely at a higher price. Right now, we're offering this course at a special early bird price for a limited time. As you've heard, our students are so happy with the new online format, and we've noticed a difference too. You can watch the course videos on your own schedule and rewatch them as many times as you would like. This way, you'll have plenty of time for the information to sink in. In addition, you'll receive the support of a comprehensive set of notes and near-weekly question and answer sessions in real time in small groups directly with us. We love connecting with our students, and we'll be there with you the whole way. You can access this course anywhere you have an internet connection, which is most places on this planet. On this webinar page, you'll find a link where you can click and sign up for a time to speak with us to answer any questions you may have about our curriculum, the structure of the class, and to help determine if it's a good fit for you. We invite you to sign up for a time to speak with us about your health goals and how mastering raw food nutrition can help you reach them. We look forward to speaking with you soon.